As the 2015 election approached, the political landscape fractured.
In 2015, Nigeria did something it had never done before. A sitting president lost. Goodluck Jonathan defeated at the ballot box by a coalition that didn't exist 3 years earlier. 12 years later, another coalition is standing in almost the exact same spot, making almost the exact same promise. So here's the question worth asking before the noise of 2027 drowns it out. Is this an actual political alternative or just a rearranged version of the same establishment? To understand what is happening now, we have to go back to how Nigerians' only successful opposition takeover actually worked. In 2013, 3 parties, the ACN, the CPC, a faction of the ANPP, and a faction of the PDP, merged into one platform, the APC. That alone wouldn't have been enough. What made it dangerous to the ruling party wasn't the merger. It was who came with it. 16 sitting governors defected, dozens of federal lawmakers followed. This is not just a coalition of famous names. There is a coalition of actual state machinery, local party structures, incumbency advantages, and get-out-of-vote networks already running in 16 states. By the time Nigeria voted in 2015, the APC wasn't an underdog telling a good story. It was a functioning parallel government in waiting. Fast forward to July 2025, a new coalition unveiled itself in Abuja, and the names are heavyweights: former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, who pulled in a wave of young urban voters in 2023, former Senate President David Mark, and ex-Kaduna Governor Nasir El-Rufai, Rotimi Amechi, Rabiu Kwankwaso, whose Kwankwasia movement commands one of the most loyal voting blocs in the north, would join soon after. On paper, that is a northern base, a southern youth base, and a decade of experience in one room. They choose an existing but marginal party, the African Democratic Congress, as their platform, deliberately echoing the APC playbook. Even the language echoed it. Coalition leaders framed the alliance as necessary to stop Nigerian drifting towards what they called one-party state. But here's the structural difference nobody on stage that day wanted to dwell on. Unlike the APC in 2013, this coalition didn't walk in with a single sitting governor, not one. In a country where governors often control local party machinery, revenue allocation, and turnout on election day, that is not a small gap. That is the entire engine room missing. By 2026, the coalition's biggest threat wasn't the ruling APC, it was itself. A leadership dispute broke out over who actually controls the ADC internal structures. Rival factions, rival claims, and it went all the way to the courts. The Supreme Court reinstated David Mark as chairman in April 2026. But the legal fighting didn't stop. By July, a separate appeal was still pending, with total of state-level party structures, and therefore control of who get nominated still contested. Then, in May 2026, the storybook turns its chapter. Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso, two of the 3 men whose voting blocks the whole coalition was built to combine, walked out. will be pointed to what he described as endless court cases, internal battles, suspicion, and division. Weeks earlier, the coalition had reportedly agreed to back one single candidate, specifically to avoid the vote splitting that helped Tinubu win with roughly a third of the vote in 2023. That plan didn't survive 2 weeks. None of this is happening in a vacuum. INEC has already locked in the calendar. Presidential and National Assembly elections on January 16, 2027. Governorship races 3 weeks later. Primaries were meant to be settled by the end of May 2026. Nomination forms are due in July. That is not much runway to resolve a leadership court case, let alone rebuild a fractured alliance. Meanwhile, the APC used its own national summit to endorse Tinubu, unopposed, as its sole 2027 candidate. No internal context, no drama, just a united front waiting on the other side of the opposition's chaos. The PDP, still Nigeria's second biggest party by structure, has refused to formally join any coalition at all, even as several of its senior figures quietly work for both sides. So, is 2027 producing a real alternative? Structurally, it is borrowing the exact blueprint that worked once in 2015. But blueprints only work when the material holds, and the coalitions built mainly around a shared ambition to remove one man, rather than a shared governing platform, tend to survive right up until the moment they have to agree on who actually leads. That is the pattern the APC avoided in 2013. Through governors and machineries, it is the pattern this coalition is now repeating through court filings and walkouts. None of this means change is impossible in 2027. Nigeria has done it once, but it raises a harder question than, can the opposition win? Even if a coalition like this wins, does swapping which political veterans hold office actually change how Nigerians govern? Or is it a real alternative, something structural, a new institutions, a new incentives that no rearrangement of familiar names can deliver on its own? That is what's sitting with before the next deadline about who joined and who walked out. Politics is often presented as a battle of personalities, but history usually tells a different story. Elections are rarely decided by species alone. They are shaped by institutions, party structures, organization, and the ability to keep alliances together when pressure begins to build. The road to 2027 is still unfolding. Court decisions may change the landscape. New defections may reshape the map. Campaign promises will dominate the headlines. But beneath all that noise lies a deeper question. As Nigeria builds a stronger political system, or is it simply changing the people operating the same system? That is the question history will eventually answer. If you enjoy this evidence-based analysis, subscribe to the Pivot Report for more in-depth analysis on African politics, history, and leadership. We focus on fact, context, and the bigger picture beyond the headlines. What do you think? Is Nigerians' new opposition coalition a genuine alternative? or just another political realignment? Share your perspective in the comments. And if you found this analysis valuable, like the video, share it with someone interested in Nigeria's future. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.